Hi guys, welcome back to the Improvement Season podcast. It is me, Steve Hall, and on the other end, Pascal Floor. Did you intro last time? For some reason, I feel like I introed last time.
I did.
Okay.
But it's your overreaching week. You just said that how freaking exhausted you are. So
yeah,
there's the excuse.
Yeah, I just went into automatic mode, you know, like when you go into intro your check-ins with clients, I just have that, like we've spoken about before, you just have this like automatic, like, whoop, or I have it, I don't know if you know, like your pin on like various things or a password. It's like not till I come to the pin pad do I know what it is. But before that, I'm like, oh yeah, I think it's, let me go to the pin pad and I know the order it goes. My brain works on the pin pad.
I know for this, I don't have it, but I exactly know what it is that you're talking about, that you need that trigger in order then to remember something.
And I think to go back to why I'm, yes, it's my overreaching week. Week 5 of the mesocycle, and I think it's a combination of things. Actually, I think I wonder if this is the first time I've really thought about it heavily. I've thought about the first session of your microcycle probably wants to be the muscle groups that you're trying to emphasize, because you're probably your most recovered for that. I train 6 days a week, Sunday's my rest day, so Monday should be my most recovered. So I put, at the moment, push there because I'm trying to emphasize kind of upper chest, shoulders, that sort of thing. But I didn't... And I've probably have thought about this before, but it's really become apparent potentially today, where this pull session regularly, I feel pretty fucked for it. Not necessarily going into it, but like during and after, I'm like, whoa, I am wiped. It might be partially down to the fact that I'm having to do a more demanding task immediately after the session, such as this, which is just like you have to be switched on and chatting. But it also, I wonder if it's because I have legs the day before. And so days after legs, I can see just leg training is just systemically more fatiguing, more neuromuscular fatigue, all that sort of stuff, I guess. Potentially the session after leg day is probably one you're trying to deprioritize. Maybe that's a smart way to go about things. And I mean, back for me is more of a deprioritization versus my quads and my kind of upper kind of shoulders and chest and everything. So yeah, anyway, it was just a thought because yesterday was legs and I think it makes a lot of sense.
Makes a lot of sense. That's also one of the reasons why I'm not programming any kind of bent over rows after heavy pulling sessions anymore. Like after heavy yeah, exactly. So heavy pulls off the floor. So something like SLDLs the day after, if you're then supposed to have something like a pull session and you start things off with a bent over row, most of the time that's a no-go, where people just... either they don't feel very much recovered physically speaking, or they don't feel... Physically speaking, it is always that they are under-recovered then, but it's more like sometimes you feel it from a muscular perspective, sometimes it's just more of a systemic perspective that you don't really feel the oomph.
Yes, that's also something new that I'm doing is I'm doing quite a lot of shoulder work before my main pulling for the session, because again, delt's my like focus. So I did 4 sets of behind the back lateral raise, cable lateral raise, and then I did 3 sets of upright rows. So like that's by far my most shoulder volume through the week as well. I very rarely go above like 5 sets for like direct work to shoulders. And then I do bent over rows after it. I don't do my hip hinging on the leg day that I did just the day before. That's all kind of quad dominant. I just do leg curls. But yeah, maybe that's kind of playing into it. And that's why my pulling is truly taking like a knock, is like I'm emphasizing so much and prioritizing so much before it. So it just simply is unlikely to be performing at its best.
Yeah. So you're doing right now then lateral raises and upright rows. What I found very interesting is when people are doing kind of an arm day, and they are just kind of doing 3 or 4 different bicep movements. I can still see the rationale for a shortened and lengthened position, where it's like shorter movement of something like a preacher curl or so, and then in the lengthened stretch position, something like an incline curl or so. But there was this one guy just at the gym. He was just like jumping from one bicep exercise to the other bicep exercise to the other bicep exercise. And he's a personal trainer in our gym. And I was just like thinking, why are you doing this? I mean, for your shoulders with the upper rows and cable laterals, I think they are different enough. But when it comes to then something like curls, I mean, yes, once again, you can prioritize them with a shortened and lengthened position, but everything other than that, if you're doing the same movement, but I don't know, with a barbell instead of dumbbells, it doesn't really make any kind of sense to me.
Yeah, no, I understand that. It's actually funny because someone asked on Instagram a question like something regarding redundant exercises, and that's what it sounds like. That sort of situation, it is redundant, but really it's only redundant if it's more volume than you need. It's also redundant, I guess, if you could just stick to one exercise, you don't have to like move to another exercise. But so long as it's not above your recovery capacity, it's not necessarily, it's, I guess, redundant. It is still a fine word to call it that it's redundant, but it's not excessive. But he was probably doing he's probably not even thinking about it. Exactly. He's just jumping between them all.
It was so funny because, I mean, we all, and it also made me realize that we are all going to the gym to actually just look better in some way or another, right? Whether it's at the beginning of your lifting career just to really just look better, or then later in regards to then bodybuilding or so. In the end, because he started going to the far end of the gym, it's always in the morning time when no one else is around. So I was able to see him still, but he was very much in the far end of the gym. At the mirror, he was turning himself like sideways to the mirror so that when he's curling, he can then see the bicep flexing. And I found it very interesting, you know, because he was then also kind of putting up his arm sleeves so that he can see the bicep. It was a very interesting observation because in the end, that's basically what we all are doing, right? And it is so interesting because I'm doing that as well. In front of the gym mirror, hitting some poses every now and then. And how much you are in your own kind of little world when you are actually training, it's quite stunning. If you just were to observe people in the gym and you have no idea or no kind of connection with people going to the gym, it would seem very, very odd to the outside observer.
Completely. And this is why when I see people, like I want to be in my own little world. Like I just want to get in there and do my stuff, because as soon as, like, I think we're both the same, when we train with other people, especially maybe not like one another, not people who are very similar to us, it can throw us off quite a lot because we're so much in our own zone and in our own world and have our own like structure and kind of thought process through things. As soon as you throw like a variable in there, it's like, oh shit, like, man, I need to like switch on now. We go into like I have social mode, which is outside the gym, and then I have like me, like the gym is my time. So when people go to the gym to socialize, I'm like, I just can't relate to that at all. I couldn't socialize and get my kind of stuff done. I can do my session and then socialize afterwards. But when it happens sometimes during, like, sometimes I'm not very good at shutting it down either. So I like will indulge it for that period of time. But I'm like, man, that's really kind of thrown me out of my kind of routine and schedule of the session and the flow of how it moves.
Yeah. And to be fair, though, the vast majority of people are probably also not the people listening to our podcast.
No.
They want to either socialize at the gym or they just want to feel good. And feeling good may be quite different to what we deem as feeling good.
Oh, yeah.
You know, just a little bit of fluff work here and there, maybe having the mobile device in your hand while doing then the calf raises and stuff like this, right? And that's totally fine. But that's, for me personally, that's not how I approach the gym and what I would like to do.
Nothing this week feels good. It all feels awful in the best way possible. Like, you know what I mean? But yeah, it's definitely getting tough. And actually, back to the point of pulling, I have deprioritized back essentially this mesocycle with the like exercise order and where I'm potentially putting volume and these sort of things. And I can see it through my back progress in that from like, if anything's stalling and hitting a wall sooner than anything else, it's my back stuff. And it makes sense. Like, I don't like it, but it makes sense that I'm getting into some of those like advanced bodybuilder issues, and I hate that I'm getting there, and I want to get rid of that as much as possible. But it makes sense that that would be happening for me, and you just have to kind of swallow it. Like we know there's an overload threshold. You meet that, you hit a PR as a consequence of being in that threshold for long enough and doing the right things, and that kind of indicates you've probably progressed and now grown. It's just going to take me longer, especially if I'm deprioritizing it. And I think some people don't always accept that. And it might not be that they're as advanced as what we are, they might just have a tougher lifestyle. They might not be able to prioritize the gym as much. They might not be able to go as many times to the gym. So they also have to swallow it.
I can definitely see how people are dropping off going to the gym regularly when they are, if they were to be in my situation, and I would even say that I'm still privileged because I work from at home. I have kind of more of a flexible lifestyle, but in regards to obligations around your family and stuff like this, if you have like a family at home with kids alongside a normal 9-to-5 job or so, I can definitely see how this then can be quite challenging overall.
Yeah. I haven't ever been in that situation, but I can definitely see it through having worked with clients, hearing the things you go through. I mean, just the fact that you get sick more regularly, that's a like clear example of it.
Yeah, totally. And then at some point, it's more becoming a frustrating thing instead of a rewarding experience.
Yeah.
If every single time you get up in the morning, you have to go very early to make it happen, for example, while your entire day is super stuffed, everything is kind of rushed. Everything needs to be scheduled out, laid out from morning time to night time. And for some people, it's simply nothing that they enjoy, right? And if then the solution was right in front of their face of like, ooh, drop this, because this is one of the reasons why I'm feeling also run down throughout the entire day. And so I think it's actually reasonable to at least take this into consideration of dropping it at that point in your life then. This is also, I think, where many people are then, maybe stopping or not taking it as seriously anymore, and then it's kind of slowly fading out.
Yeah, I think it's that comment on seriousness. I see it with people where I think you did a great kind of infographic a while back. It was like the invest reward spectrum, something along those lines. Like the more you invest, the more you get, but it's diminishing returns. And so you have to, at some point, look at how much you're investing in. Is it worth the little dividends you're getting? And like we know, you can maintain your muscle mass on such little volume.
Yeah.
Imagine how much more spare time you'd have if we just went to the gym like 3 times a week for an hour. Whoa,
that would be crazy.
That opens up a lot.
Because I'm realizing that so often when I have a rest day and I have my client check-ins, because I'm used to getting up so early in the morning, I immediately start client check-ins, but there's no interruption of them going to the gym. And often on those days, I end up working for like 12 hours. Simply because there's not this short period of time of going to the gym, getting changed, hopping out of the shower, then having breakfast with my family and all that kind of stuff, you know. And I always then find myself spending so much more time actually at work, when in reality I could, of course, also spend it somehow differently than with family and so. But it's more so the exception that I then have a rest day, and I then take it as an advantage of getting shit done.
Yeah, it's like if you can, I think that's a common thing with, I mean, I don't know how many personal trainers still do it, but I knew it was a really common thing for online personal trainers to do all their online clients on their rest day. They do all their client check-ins. I don't know how many, like, yeah, exactly. Like there's a certain number, your brain just dies, basically. Yeah. You can't keep going. But yeah, if you can get more done on that rest day and then it opens up the other days, like, so you can go to the gym or whatever it is, like, that's just like prioritizing things. And that makes tons of sense. And that's why like deloads, I always hope to try and get many like podcasts and things booked in, but it's like, as you're approaching the deload, you're also going through the hardest week of training. So you have to be really ahead with like booking things in and thinking about things. So maybe that's the week, like I go get my hair cut or whatever.
By the way, Steve, I just wanted to say with a haircut, I found a barber shop just around the corner here, very close to me, because the old barber that I had been with since over 10 years, he's basically on the other side of the town. I've talked about it a couple of times that it then takes me like in total, probably like 3 hours just to get a haircut, like 1 hour to the place, 1 hour of a haircut, 1 hour back again. And it's expensive. And I was just thinking, man, I don't really care about haircuts anymore. Maybe I did when I was in the midst of my 20s, but now it's just, Katie can't even cut my hair and I'm totally fine with it. I don't give a fuck anymore what people think about my haircut, right? And that's why I found that barber just around the corner. It's kind of like a Turkish place. And going in there, sitting down, and then they just call up like, next, sit down, say what you want. And they are just like rushing through it. Here with my old barber, it took like 1 hour, and he does a very, very good job. Very precise with everything. And that guy did sufficient enough for me what I needed, right? But it was very fast, like, and that came for $20, right? And it's just around the corner. I'm saving so much time, saving so much money. And because I don't really put so much priority in cutting my hair anymore, it's sufficient. And that is also then what I said to myself, like, every deload now, I'm going to get my hair cut as well, instead of waiting for like 8 weeks, because it's just such an investment.
This is welcome to my world. That's exactly the barber I just go to. Like, I have no loyalty to anyone. I apologize. I just go get it done. Takes like half an hour all in, and it's great. And if they don't even want to have a talk, I quite like it. I could just sit there and just zone out.
And that's what he did, or was. I think he couldn't even talk German, to be honest, because sometimes I said something and he was just looking around, very confused, like for help. That helpful look, right? Like, what is he saying?
I hate situations where I can't hear someone clearly, because I just feel really awkward. Like I need to hear what they're saying to be able to have a conversation. I'm not good at faking it. So when I'm getting my haircut, I almost like, it's noisy in there anyway. They chop in things. I'm not concentrating necessarily on what they're saying. I'm like, man, I don't know what they said. Like, just smile and nod. And don't nod, because that could impact the haircut. But it's funny you brought up hair, because obviously you saw I did the AI thing.
Yeah.
I essentially saw a few people doing it, and I was like, oh, let's go see what this app is. And then I saw you had to like pay, and I was like, fuck this, delete it. And then I saw loads of other people doing it. I was like, fuck it, let's go now. Let's see if I can get a free trial. And then I saw it was like a one-off payment basically for 100 images. I was like, fuck it, let's do it. I can put it as like a business expense, because I'm putting it on social media. I don't even know if that's possible, but I hope. It was £5 for like 100 images. Anyway, my point is, man, it made me really want like to have luscious hair and like have a better hairline, and it also made me want to grow, like seriously grow my hair. And I'm like, could I grow it even with the hairline I've got, or do I need to like, I've actually I started looking into like finasteride, midoxanil, all this shit, and I'm just like, I don't know if I want to fuck with like those. They're drugs at the end of the day, and they can have negative impacts, I'm sure. I don't want loads of people in my DMs.
Also on the banned list for natty competitions?
That's also a good point. I'd have to check that out. I actually have zero idea, because apparently I think it's finasteride, because of the impact it has. It can increase your testosterone levels. So imagine if that actually can happen, then, but it also increases estrogen levels as a consequence of the testosterone going up. I don't know enough about it, but anyway, I just like looked into it all based off just these photos of just this AI giving me like this amazing hair, and I was like, oh man, this looks so good. So coming back to your point of not caring, I like to convince myself I don't care how I look and my hair and these sort of things. But whenever I get a haircut and I come out and I'm like, man, I just look so much better. I feel more confident. I feel better in myself. And I wish it wasn't that way, but I think I just have to accept I do care a little bit about that sort of thing.
I think in the end, we all care, because it's just like human psychology. We want to belong. We want to be part of a group and all that kind of stuff. Well, maybe it's not that you're seeking for appreciation of the people at the supermarket or so. I don't think that you want to look like an arbiter as well, right? Because then you could make the argument, if you don't really care, then you wouldn't really care of whether you're a fat I'm always saying a fat piece of shit, and I don't really mean it, but it's just like coming out of my mouth. But a fat piece of shit or someone who looks good and is huge and jacked.
Yeah.
Right. I would always then prefer, of course, looking huge and jacked and just good looking.
That's also what the AI did to me. It was like, fuck, look how jacked this fucking dude is.
Did it to everyone, basically. Everyone was just looking at insane.
But it is also crazy, just like the fact that it can produce images and artwork that you'd have to previously pay someone to, like a specialist to go and do. It's like, oh, damn. Like some of them, it literally looked like my face in a different like body or painting or something. I was like, this is crazy. You'd have to pay someone for this stuff before. Yeah. I paid £5 for 100 different iterations of me. Yeah. It's madness.
Yeah,
where it's all going.
I think I even talked about it at one point, right before the kids and Katie left for holiday, that I wanted to actually play a little bit around with the stable diffusion and all that kind of stuff. And I think that this will have a major impact on the art world. I don't think that artists will disappear. I think, though, that it will completely transform what an artist may be and also how they are working, because they can, of course, take advantage of that as well and get their art to a whole new level, right? Yeah. And also be maybe even more efficient with it as well, because it's not just like that you're putting some kind of words in the search engine and then it spits out the perfect image. You have to play around with those tags, with the combination and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, it's going to be very, very interesting, especially because it's developing so rapidly at the moment, especially because so many people are getting on board. And because of that, you're feeding the engine with more information. And by that, it's kind of like a monster. The more you feed it, the quicker it can grow.
What's the film with Will Smith with all the iRobot or whatever it is?
Yeah.
How many times have these like futuristic videos come to life though? Like, it's scary how often we can predict.
I mean, if you are looking kind of into or listening to AI experts, the possibility that something like iRobot is actually taking place is fairly low. So kind of a dystopian. I mean, with everything, there's a chance.
Yeah.
Right? And people in itself are so incredibly bad with statistics and probabilistic thinking that you would need to actually then highlight everything in a statistical format to then actually see the probabilistic outcome for this. But if I just were to tell you like, hey, there may be a 1% chance, 1% could be of so many things, right? And people are so bad at those kind of things. Yeah. So yeah, there's always a chance, but the likelihood that this is occurring or going to happen in the next decade or so is very, very, very low.
And I think the AI also is scary because it comes down to like people use Photoshop and things. This is like next level Photoshop. Like you can have a whole body built with your face on it kind of thing. And like deep fakes also something that's coming out. Like people are amazing at that. They've been putting it in like films and movies. But then it makes me even love like bodybuilding and the sport of bodybuilding even more, because there is no deep fake. There is no AI on stage. You are like showing everything like bare and there. Yeah. So yeah, just kind of reinforced how I just love that. Like you're never going to get that on stage. Like you are kind of all there in front of the judges. They judge what you have, and you can't kind of get away with anything that social media might be able to give you, or any kind of AI or what have you.
I mean, I can open up a whole new can of worms, but I would leave it at that, because otherwise we're going down a rabbit hole that will take us the entire episode to philosophize about the certain or a couple of outcomes and stuff like this. So let's not go down that route.
The other technology I saw, my sister sent me this. They've introduced glasses that people who are deaf can put on, and they can give subtitles to people talking. So they can read the subtitles. Yeah. That's great. That, of course, like that doesn't even sound that complex. It sounds like that should be introduced a while ago, but that's awesome. Like that's damn cool.
Also, it's something that you, Mike, and I discussed when we were in Vienna. At some point, it will come that you have somewhat of a device in your ear. And when someone is talking in a different language that you don't understand, that it directly translates it into your language. And then learning languages becomes kind of irrelevant.
Yeah.
And it may seem also there a little bit dystopian, a little bit negative. What about jobs and all that kind of stuff? I think it's great technology and technological advancement. Because that opens up an opportunity to take that time, use that time for something else, instead of spending 3, 5, 6 years in school learning a different language.
Yeah. I think that's a lot of the time people don't think about all the pros that come with it. They just think, oh, look at all the jobs that are going to be removed. It's like, yeah, but these are like, that opens up those people to go and do something better potentially and like invest that kind of intelligence towards something else and that time and energy towards something else. So
totally.
Yeah, for sure.
Opportunity cost.
Yeah, exactly. How is your week going? Are you still training, or have you already just started deloading?
Yeah, I unfortunately needed to start deload here today. Simply because, to give a little bit of background story and context behind it. So tomorrow, by the time that you're listening to that, it's already done. I'm traveling to Bonn, which is on the other side of Germany, to get a tattoo done on both of my hands. And Tony, so my youngest son, he was very, very sick at the beginning or at the end of last week, and I needed to then take care of him because Katie wasn't at home, so I was very close to him. He was very, very sick, and I tried my very best to not get sick. I did everything, Steve, everything. I never in my life was I so honored to not get sick, even to the point where I was maybe a little bit over the edge, but that's just the person that I am. If there's something that I'm...
Garlic? Huh? Did you do the garlic?
I did do garlic. And
you did do garlic, good.
And also, I was using a face mask at home.
Yeah, that's
the entire time.
That is
ever since like 1 week, I'm using a face mask at home. Just even if I get infected, which is very likely because I feel some kind of sickness symptoms, I wanted to keep the viral infection or the amount of viral infection actually low so that the body has hopefully the capacity of fighting it. Because of that, I was then actually squeezing in some rest days when I didn't really feel like it. And then I wanted to actually get my last training session done here today. And yesterday evening, what happened? Katie left the stove on and I, with my hand on the stove, and I burned my hand, and today was supposed to be a push session. And that's why I couldn't go to the gym either. And also because I felt a little bit more sick here in the morning as well. So each and every single morning I woke up feeling a little bit more sick, a little bit more sick, a little bit more sick. And I really do hope that tomorrow morning when I'm waking up at the hotel room, I'm not in a state of fever or so, because then I can't go. And everything is paid for already. And that is something that I wanted to avoid. So yeah, that's the state of the game.
Do you have to pay a deposit for the tattoo? How do they set that up?
I needed to pay a deposit. Also, of course, because it's on the other side of Germany, needed to actually book some flight tickets, hotel rooms, all that kind of stuff. And I didn't really expect to then get sick or that there's anything coming up or so. And that's why I never really book a refund policy kind of, or an insurance. No. And this time I really was thinking I should have done that because it would probably be the best to stay at home. But I was waiting for this appointment to take place already since close to a year now, because it was supposed to happen the first time in June. Then something came up on his end, so the tattoo artist's end. That's why he never traveled there. And now it was kind of the replacement appointment this time. And I didn't want to kind of move it again.
Yeah, and I don't blame you.
Yeah.
You just have to kind of suck it up if you're feeling shitty. And
the thing is that it's probably not a wise decision. And I know this. But this is just stubborn me once again. I know it's not the wisest decision because especially getting your hands tattooed, man, it's fucking painful. And it's a lot of stress on the system. And of course, your immune system is being kind of attacked as well because these are open wounds. And if it's still, if it's already in the midst of fighting an infection or so, it's not the smartest thing to do. That's why I'm also saying, as long as I feel the way that I do right now, it's all right. But as soon as I will very much kind of, I don't know, feel very exhausted, feel very much like a sickness, right? Right now, it's kind of have a little bit of a sore throat. I'm not coughing though. I'm not having any kind of runny nose. I'm not feverish, all that kind of stuff. That's why I'm saying like, probably I'm just run down by the entire mesocycle, being fatigued, alongside then maybe fighting off a cold at the moment. But it should be all right to then go in there. But if I were to then wake up, have a runny nose, coughing especially, I don't want to be that disrespectful sitting there coughing the entire time while the artist, a self-employed person, is then needing to do his job, you know, and being in a hopefully hygienic environment as well. In that case, I would definitely cancel. And probably there is a chance then to kind of move it at a different day if you can prove that you are sick or something like this.
Yeah, I wonder what sort of policy they have, especially because they had to move you around previously. Yeah. And man, then you just have to stay in your hotel in Bonn. Like,
that would be so awful.
Sleep. Just stay
I've
away
never been
from
to Bonn.
family
Maybe
for a
it
while.
is a beautiful city. I doubt it though, because do you know a little bit about the history of Germany? I'm not talking about Nazis and DDR.
Then not a huge amount.
That's all. Okay, it has a little bit to do with the DDR. Bonn was the former major city of Germany when it was kind of split into two. So it could be that it actually turns out to be a very beautiful city. I don't know. Never been to Bonn, but I mean, I don't want to get sick and just stay in my hotel room. I can think of better things to be doing than being in my hotel room sick.
I think we all can think of better things. That doesn't sound great. But I hope it all goes through because, yeah, it's exciting. Because your last tattoo was your hand, obviously, that you got, well, your finger, sorry.
Yeah, but that doesn't really count, right? I mean...
When was the one, when's your last proper project that you had done?
I don't really know, Steve. Don't know.
Over a decade.
15, something like this or so.
Okay, almost 10 years. Yeah,
Yeah.
damn. Yeah, it's a long
15
time ago.
to 10, 16, 216, something like this, probably.
Yeah.
I'm sure that it wasn't 217, so it must have been like 215, somewhere around there. Yeah.
I imagine because for me, it is a little bit addictive. Like I just want to keep getting more, but I imagine there becomes a point where you can't do another one, or you force yourself to like take a chill period, and then you kind of forget the joy of having it done.
Yeah, not only that, but at some point the pain just sucks. Everything that you have gotten so far, Steve, has been a breeze. Maybe the hands, the hands were a little bit painful. The double session
wasn't great.
But the thing is that it's black and white and just a little bit quicker, right? On the hand, it's not a big sized thing. Just wait until you're then trying something like the rib cage or so. And then you don't want to experience that anymore. It fucking sucks. And then you start hating the entire process of getting or being exposed to that pain, especially when the sessions then are like 6, 7, 8 hours long and you just have to push through it. It's not fun then anymore.
I do. Yeah, I mean, the double session was 2-8 back-to-back days. That did suck. And it just is uncomfortable in the chair. No matter how you sit there, you get uncomfortable.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Yeah, I still have. It's a weird thing. It's kind of like contest prep and getting to stage. Like there's so many negative sides to that, but the overall experience is just something that's like, man, I love doing it. I love going to stage. I love getting shredded, even though there's so many things that you'd look at and be like, why do you enjoy that? That's like self-harm.
Yeah. No, and also at some point, I just wanted to get a little bit of ink again. You start to then forget about the pain, the entire process. And I've gotten very picky about what it is that I want because I have so many tattoos that, of course, there are some that I got when I was 18. And that doesn't really reflect me anymore. That is something that I don't really stand for anymore. And that's why I'm more so kind of very picky about what I want, who I want them from. So I'm doing way more research about the tattoo artist. And then I'm also willing then to travel and so. And that, of course, limits you on how often you can get tattooed and stuff like this. Yeah. But in regards to then training, I decided to just like, normally I was planning of starting the deload right then with the tattoo session. And now I started it like 2-3 days earlier. And then I will probably start 2-3 days earlier with the new mesocycle.
Yeah. Yeah, you have to see, I guess for you, it's a case of like, hopefully you're fine to get the tattoo and then it doesn't push you over the edge where your immune system's having to work extra hard. And so you end up getting sick from having the tattoo or whatever. That's also one of the things that I'm actually a little bit anxious about, that this is actually then going to occur, that I travel back home, and then it hits me, and I'm just lying in bed the entire weekend or so. Yeah,
that would suck. Be cost of doing business.
Yeah, it is in some instances. In some ways, the hands also the most. I can't imagine. I imagine some actually body parts are more awkward than the hands, but the hands is a bit awkward because you could wear a glove, I guess. That's not what I did, but you could actually wearing gloves would work really well. Or if they have that like second skin now where you can like put it on if the artist has that to give you, or if you've purchased it ahead of time. I might do that next time.
Yeah, I hope that they are working with that, so that because I have also gloves with me. These are motorbike gloves, not the big ones, but that you can put underneath your normal gloves just to make it a little bit warmer. And they are just like out of cotton, which is perfect because they are very thin, but they are kind of like protective as well. And that's what I'm wearing. And I really do hope that they are having like this plaster.
Yeah,
basically.
It kind of looks like cling film, but it's not cling film, and you leave it on for like a week or whatever.
Exactly.
That stuff's, from what I've seen, that looks perfect, but none of my artists have used that yet. Kind of like, oh, damn.
I had it for my finger, but because it was kind of such a moving body part, it slipped like after a couple of hours.
Makes sense.
And when I was younger and got my other tattoos, that shit wasn't around.
No.
That's how old I am. I can say something like this.
Well, it was funny. I was just, because obviously I've had this new internet installed, and I was literally talking to my mum about it because our internet at home is awful. And then I was just like, man, there was no, like, I can't believe we lived in a time when there was no internet. We both work through the internet's everything in our lives now. Like I watch TV, it's internet. Everything is in, like, everything I do, pay for stuff, it uses the internet on my phone. Like, it's crazy. Anyway, that's a whole nother story.
Yeah. Let's go back to a little bit more lifting, because we've talked a lot about AIs, tattoos, all that kind of stuff. Talking a little bit more about lifting may be a good idea for the audience as well.
Do you not see the progress you would like? Are you sick of writing your own programs? Or perhaps you need some accountability in order to stick with a plan? Then it's time to start working with us. We at Revive Stronger offer a truly personalized coaching service. You'll get more than just an email with some macros or random cookie cutter program. With Revive Stronger, you will be the center of our attention. You will receive your own fully individualized training protocol alongside a customized nutritional strategy. We created the coaching around your needs, wants, personal preferences, and your own unique lifestyle. Every single week, we delve into your program in order to make appropriate adjustments so that we get the most out of your time and the best possible outcome. We help both female and male athletes to seriously change their body composition by adding more muscle mass and decreasing fat tissue. No matter if you're a competitive bodybuilder or just want to look better, if you need help with your progress and taking your physique to the next level, our coaching is for you. It's time to make a change. Sign up today and let's revive stronger.
For sure. Yeah, I don't know. So for the rest of my week, I've got push tomorrow, and then I'll have another leg session, and then I'll have pull. Yeah, I think I'm anxious and excited for those sessions, but it is like, they're just going to be such a grind to get through. And it's like you spoke about, like, I think it was last time, where it's just, I can't imagine going through another week like this. And if I was to try and attempt a week 6 and try and progress or maintain performance, I could only see it dropping off, and the chances of me just, when you're in a set and you can't focus anymore, like you're just switched off. Like, I just don't have that capacity. I think that would end up happening. I'd end up maybe getting injured or something like that. And again, it's similar to the quantity issue. Like, if you have so much work to do within a session, there's no way you can stay focused for that entire session. You really have to be switched on to work to 0 reps in reserve and push yourself to that intensity. But once you have learned that, like, week 1 is not a walk in the park in the slightest, and then it's just a case of you slowly build up from that. So yeah, that's what I'm going through. And then actually, I've pretty much got back to the weight that I was pre-mini cut just over 3 months ago. I think we spoke about that last time. So at the moment, I won't take this week as an example because my appetite is not as good in overreaching weeks. It's just tougher to get the food in. But it looks like I'll be able to keep pushing. So I'll have at least one more mesocycle after this one of massing. And then I'll have to see what I do after that in terms of where I go, because I think I'm holding this weight the best I've ever held it. But Pascal's, just for the listeners, updated our handbook, the client handbook, and he's gone over kind of in depth on how to kind of get consistent photos. And I realized, like, it's actually, even though I take photos fairly regularly, I don't have very good, consistent like setups for photos. Now that we're in this house, I have a good consistent setup that I can be able to use. But yeah, I was trying to find photos to compare back to, like, I don't know, years ago that I'd been at this body weight. It's like, man, I don't have any good photos, because even the camera being at a different angle impacts that. So I was like, man, it feels like I'm being a bit of a fraud if I try and compare these to this, because you can't see it. So yeah, anyway, I need to take some standardized photos or a video and then take some screenshots next week at some point. I am bad for something you put in the handbook, and it makes complete sense. I think it makes most sense to take it during the deload first thing in the morning. You have a bit more time during the deload, as we spoke about, and then you can take that photo under standardized conditions, fasted. I think that's a great idea, and that's what I advise for clients. But I'm bad for taking it post-workout when I'm feeling myself and I'm pumped. But at least I keep that, I tend to keep that consistent at least. So it's always like I've got a pump and post-workout, because when you're shredded, taking it flat first thing in the morning, you can kind of deal with it. But when you're kind of in off season and you're just like, I'm flat and I just look like fat in these photos, it's not the most fun to take it at that time. So yeah, I think that guide, I don't know, that could even be like a little mini series of like a blog or something on the website, because I think people would find that really valuable, because it touches on some really good points, because people know photos are important and they have like a basic idea of how to take them. But it's so often that people don't take good progress photos. Yeah,
and I wanted to create it not only because I think it's important to have a good instructional guide there for our athletes, but at the same time, the reason why we're doing have done certain presentations, for example, or doing certain videos, hopefully in the future as well, about certain topics over on YouTube, is because questions, they always come up, and a certain type of questions come up more frequently, right? And then you can always like revert them back to, especially the coaching handbook, when people are working with us, being like, hey, have you read the coaching handbook? No? What? You were supposed to do that, right? Yeah. And everything's in there, right? And then you can really focus on the process rather than, then you can really focus on the progress rather than the process, in my opinion.
Yeah. Yeah, I think if there are coaches listening who don't have like a setup handbook guide for their clients, it's an absolute no-brainer to have that, because like you said, if you have so many questions leading into coaching that could just be covered in this handbook from the get-go, you can start focusing on the things that matter for your body composition goals, not, oh, how do I do this? How do I do that? How does the check-in process go? When you can kind of get all that out the way, things just run way more smoothly. Obviously, not everyone, like you said, not everyone's going to read the handbook, but hopefully they do. And I mean, all you have to do is
a couple of ideas on how I can make them read that.
Have a Q&A in the first, what's it called? In the first check-in. Do you pass or not? If you didn't pass, you have to read it now. For you then,
slashing
Pascal,
the calories by 100 every single time you can't answer a question correctly.
Add in some Bulgarian split squats. We're going to put in some burpees in the program.
Yeah.
So I was going to ask you, Pascal, I think previously you mentioned, actually, I don't know, where are you right now in your kind of mass? Where do you see yourself going kind of into the new year? Do you have any mini cuts kind of in your mind planned in for a particular time?
Yeah, I would like to consider starting a short mini cut very soon, probably then after maybe the holidays, and nothing more than maybe up to 4 weeks. And I rather take it then as it comes. So, for example, one of my athletes, we did just recently a mini cut together because he's same as you. His caloric intake is insane, over 4,000 calories on a daily basis. And he was just like, man, Pascal, I'm just sick and tired of food. Can we do something like a mini cut? I was just saying, yeah, sure thing. Then the purpose behind it was to resensitize him and make him hungry again. And we did it. We planned it. We did it. And after 3 weeks, I think it was, must have been three and a half weeks, something like this, all the way up to then Thanksgiving. And then we cut it there because he said like, hey, I'm done with mini cut. It did everything that I wanted it to. First off, of course, shedding some body fat, but at the same time resensitizing him for then a surplus. And that's also what I want to do as well. Just like shedding a couple of pounds and yeah, then going into hopefully a proper gaining phase without any kind of injuries due to then the snowboarding trip that is then coming up at the end of January. And I really do hope that this time I'm not kind of breaking anything or kind of getting hurt big time. so that I can really then start the next phase, the next macro cycle. So that's the plan for now.
Yeah, no, that sounds exciting. And yeah, it's funny, your client had 3.5 weeks. I was literally the same as me. I had 3.5 weeks. Appetite was back running. I was in a good spot again.
Yeah.
And it's surprising, like, and that's what I think a mini cut should be. The more times I run them, I'm like, you really don't want to be running into like high levels of diet fatigue, feeling run down. If you need weeks of afterwards to recover from the mini cut,
Yes.
like that's the mini cut hasn't really propelled you forward. It's kind of set you back. And I've definitely been there before and done that wrong. So yeah, the rob the fat bank as quick as possible is essentially like get in and out as quick as possible, and that's the kind of goal for the mini cut.
Yeah, and then for me personally, it's probably then gaining all the way up to June, July, and then I'm going into a cutting phase that then will make me look a little bit better for then the wedding. The wedding will take place in the midst of August. I just don't want to look like peak bulk when I'm then getting some wedding photos.
I'll be there to make you look skinny.
I don't want to look skinny
not
either.
skinny.
I want to look good.
Chiseled.
So for me personally, what I deem as good for myself, and that's then the plan for it. So that I'm gaining all the way into the summertime. I think cutting through the summertime is something that is quite easy anyway. It often doesn't really align with my timeline. Often I'm gaining through them the summertime and I have to cut through the wintertime, which makes things a little bit, I don't know, off. And so, but that's the plan, then gaining all the way into the summertime and then cutting and then considering, depending on how things are going. Using this as a cut before a cut, maybe then going all the way into September, then from September, maybe a shorter gaining phase into December, January timeframe, and then starting something like a prep. But that is not set in stone yet. Definitely not. Or maybe, depending on how well the cut in the summertime is going, could even be that you first have to start cutting in around March time or so, right? Which then gives you another proper gaining phase of around 6 months.
Yeah. Yeah, I was going to ask, is that going to be like a diet before the diet type of setup towards at the end of the year? And that's the sort of thing, I haven't planned that far ahead, but I think that's the sort of thing I would be considering as well, where, and again, probably starting prep in March, being like not much over 10% body, like above stage weight, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
That'd be pretty cool.
It wasn't that I needed to plan that far ahead or that I intentionally did it that way. It's just aligning with then the wedding. Because that is kind of a bigger deal for me. I want to look good in those photos that we are then getting a professional photographer to take as well. And I don't want to look like, I don't know, peak bulk, moon phase going on. And I myself don't like that look on me personally, which is unfortunate because on some other individuals, I see them in the peak off season. I'm just like, man, you look good. Yeah. But for me, I don't think that I look good when I'm peak off season.
No, it's the same with me. I like my face when I'm, what would it be, like 5% above stage weight. Like I don't like my face like when I'm at like stage condition, although I don't go as like skeleton as a lot of people do. Yeah. But when I get to this sort of stage, I'm a bit chubbier than I would like at this point. It's fine. I can deal with it. It's better than it used to look at this body weight, which is a marker of progress in its own right in some ways. But yeah, if I was getting married, I certainly would be like, right, I want to get into like the mid 180s, sit around there. That would be a nice body weight to be at. And I'd also feel good at that body weight too. If you're at peak mass, often you don't feel your best. And again, you're not going to enjoy the day as much.
Once again, it's something why I was able to manage to actually stay on the leaner side because it just makes me feel better, to be honest. Yeah. And also the health markers. We all know what I went through over the past years when it comes to also heart irregularities. So, and that is, I would also say, probably contributed to have a higher body weight that I'm actually comfortable with.
That makes sense as well.
I would at least assume that it has to do with this because we know that the heart rate is also then accelerated and higher than normal, the resting heart rate when you are just a heavier individual, and blood pressure is higher as well most of the time, while not in detrimental territories yet. It's probably still already a strain onto your entire system.
Sorry, I was just looking at my watch because I was like, you've just made me wonder what my resting heart rate is.
And what is it?
50 beats per minute at the moment, apparently,
Yeah.
according to the Fitbit, which is pretty good for this body weight. Normally, when I get this point, it's at 55.
Yeah, I just want to say, I did remember that it's mostly like that.
Yeah. And then, obviously, when I get, like, when you're stage ready, I get below 40 quite often, which I think is quite typical for people.
Yeah.
But I've been in the high 50s before, close to 60 when I'm like 200 plus. And then it's like you said, the health markers, like I knew I felt terrible at that point.
Yeah.
I never want to have to, I don't think it was worth getting to that point at all. So yeah, I think that's great that you're keeping that in mind, because if you feel better, you're able to perform better in the gym, all those factors too. And essentially, yeah, right now you're just trying to stay fit, healthy and injury free. And then if we can prep together in 2024, that would be very cool.
Yeah,
Very,
absolutely. Talking about health markers, and I think that many enhanced athletes, so there are a lot now out there, and also coaches who put a lot of emphasis on then health markers and checking them and all that kind of stuff. But we also know that there's a lot of people out there juiced up to the gills, claiming that they are talking about, take this supplement stack. And in reality, he's full of like 4 to 5 grams of gear on a weekly basis. A fucking supplement won't do jack shit for you, right? It's just funny, the irony behind it, right? Talking about health and being full of gear like 24/7.
It's kind of similar to those people. I don't know if this works completely, but it's like someone saying, you like eat something with aspartame in or sweeteners and they're smoking on the weekend and, I don't know, drinking on the weekend or something like that.
Yeah.
It's just kind of one of those things.
Yeah, and I'm more so referring to those people who are irresponsible with their drug protocol, right? Where it's just like, holy shit, that is enough for someone who's doing, I don't know, half a year of just fasting and you do it in 1 week or so.
I think it just comes from the type of person, I think a lot of the time, who take steroids are those who are less risk averse. So they're more likely just go and do shit and like not worry about it too much. And I think a lot of people unfortunately do view, and that's like the whole joke, people are like, creatine, that's a steroid. I think people think that like steroids and creatine and supplements, like they're all on the same level and it's just not treated with the respect it deserves. So it's great seeing like someone like John Jewett, up on the Olympia stage and stuff, talking about the importance of all the health and everything in that regard, because hopefully that does drip down to the people who are thinking it's just like creatine, let's just go on this little stack or whatever. It's like, oh no, that could have life-changing consequences.
Yeah, to be honest though, I'm also clueless about the entire realm because I'm not following enough people. The ones that I'm following are quite responsible with their drug protocols, and even there, I'm just seeing what they tend to share. That is limited information. So I'm living in my own little bubble, and that is something that I'm fully aware of. And that's why the things that I'm saying, I'm just speaking out of my ass. I'm not really following so many people who are just like blasting. But I mean, you just have to open up Instagram and probably you're going to see someone who's just like on a shit ton of gear anyway.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's a minefield. You just have no idea. But yeah, I'm the same. It's like I live in my little natty bubble and I don't want to have to worry about thinking about these things outside, because it just adds so many I think even it's scary because like the knowledge on that side, at least from what I gather, has only just improved, where people really are thinking about health. Whereas in the past, I get the feeling people didn't really think about health so much. And I'm like, wow, that's kind of scary. And I'm glad that it's getting this way. And it can't really get too far that way. But I mean, I hope most people have realized this risk, because even when I was looking into finasteride and midoxanil, I'm like, these are drugs. There's risks involved. There's downsides. There's not just, you can't just take something and there's all pros. Even caffeine, it has downsides to taking it. You can't just take it and it's like, yeah, all wins. I wish there was something like that. I don't know. Carbs, there's no downsides. It's not a drug though. At least in my book. No downsides, it's fine.
No, absolutely. We still have like 7 minutes kind of to make it to an hour, Steve. And we've been talking about kind of now carbs as well, right? And in the past, we've talked about it several times already. And sometimes we are trying to preach all the time that eating relatively clean is a good approach, right? So often do I see, or I have the feeling though, that people don't really do that. I don't know. Is it so hard to eat properly? And I use this word quite carefully because what eating properly means to me can, of course, be quite different to someone else. But I think that everyone has somewhat of an image in their head when it comes to eating properly. And that probably doesn't involve a lot of, I don't know why I'm thinking of it, Pop-Tarts, candy, cereals, and all that kind of stuff. Even though the cereals can, I mean, if you really think about it, it's just like a little bit of sugar and all that kind of stuff. But you get what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. It's something I do see for sure. And I think it's a consequence of a few things. It more often happen, basically, it's when people aren't forced to realize that it's a problem for them. And I think most of the time that's because there is limited issues with it in the short term, in that if your micronutrient quality, the quality of nutrition is not great in the short term, you don't really feel the ill effects. But if you do it chronically, I think you're going to start seeing those kind of poor health effects kind of coming through. And same with like, if people are dieting and their diet is garbage, they're probably in a honeymoon phase of dieting where they can get away with it, at least in the short term. And then they start getting starving and then they have to clean it up. And then more often it's in their gaining phase when they're on lots of food, is normally the people who are on plenty of food, maybe someone in my situation. But yeah, having some of those things, like you mentioned, help me hit my numbers, and I need to have those to be able to eat the calories I need. But that doesn't mean my whole diet needs to transform into that. But it easily could, because I'm not hungry. I could easily just eat a pizza and like chips and fried food and screw over vegetables and fruit, and I'll be fine through the day. In the short term, I wouldn't notice anything. But in the long term, again, like I said, I think I'd start feeling real shitty real soon.
Can I just interrupt you right there? Because I have the feeling that you are the type of person, you are very much committed to the task as well. And you know that you're using this as a tool in order to see the results that you want and do the things that you need. You're not implementing something like cereals or kind of, I don't know, whatever it is that you're eating in order to, I don't know, reward yourself, or you just needed a little bit more flexibility. I needed a little bit more time off. And so, that's why I think there's a clear difference, because whenever I'm saying something like this, there are people such as you then who listen now to what I'm saying and completely misunderstand what I'm trying to say. They are the ones who are then saying like, what the fuck? I'm eating cereals and there's nothing wrong with me and stuff like that. I'm also coming from the place of people who have actually very little business in eating those things because, one, they don't need the calories. Two, they're constantly complaining about hunger. Three, they're just feeling shitty. Four, they are, once they're going into a deficit, kind of having, I don't know, it's kind of like a drug addict who's withdrawal symptoms, right?
Withdrawals, right?
Of like, shit, I need the next donut or so, right? Because I do remember when I was going through binges, it was I've never dealt with kind of issues around food. It was first when I've incorporated hyper-palatable, highly processed things. And I don't want to demonize it. That's not what I'm trying to say here, but it makes you way more susceptible of then going above your calories and beyond. And at the same time, it makes it so much harder to get rid of those things once you had it constantly in your diet, right? Because from a physiologic perspective, the brain, it just is such a rewarding food. And it kicks off so many chemical processes in your brain that you are chasing that. And I don't want to compare food with drugs, but because it gives you that rewarding sensation, the body wants this once again, right? Because something like this, it could never find in nature, in real life. And it definitely ensures that you are surviving because of its caloric values and all that kind of stuff. And I think it needs to be said that there's a clear differentiation between people such as yourself, Steve, who are very committed, who use these things as tools in order to get from A to B, and other people who don't really have any kind of business of getting those things in their diet and would be way better off and having a way cleaner, way more structured dietary approach that is less exciting.
Yeah, I know what you mean. It's kind of like a glimpse of light, and then you're like chasing that light and chasing that high almost of like, oh, I need this thing now because I've experienced it. And I think your nutrition in terms of palatability, it makes sense to have it as like a graduated approach. So I didn't suddenly go from ending contest prep to my diet now. It was a gradual approach. I was eating my usual breakfast of oats and berries and everything. And like I was having a lot of I didn't have fruit juices and smoothies. These are things I've introduced, like basically forced to introduce to get to my calorie total. It's not like you jump to those. And I think unfortunately that's sometimes what people do is they're suddenly like, okay, I've stopped cutting, I'm now here. Or during their diet phases, they like save all these calories for whatever it could be, this tub of Halo Top or Ben and Jerry's at the end of the day. And it's like, they feel so tired and their training isn't good and they're doing it all just for that hit of that tasty food. And it's like, it's probably not worth it right now. And I guess this comes down to like, people talk about the diet you're on needs to be sustainable. Otherwise it's not like a good diet. But I think you're not trying to sustain a calorie deficit. So if in the short term, that's not how you would want to eat long term, you want to have some palatable foods. But whilst you're dieting, maybe that isn't for you. Maybe when you're at maintenance in a surplus, then you can have some of these things because you have the budget for it and you're not going to be as susceptible to kind of not meeting your goals and outcomes. And I think some people just don't realize that. And so they're in this constant like no man's land where they're constantly trying to go one way, but they're trying to eat like someone else or do it like someone else. And like you said, it comes down to the individual and the situation you're in and whether or not you not deserve it, but whether or not it's appropriate for you at that time.
Yeah, I think it's very well put. And I think that more people should take it to heart to eat a little bit cleaner. Because probably you will have a much easier time. And people are always then kind of baffled of how I am able to cut on so low calories or so little calories of around like 13 to 1500 calories and make it a breeze. It is because I first and foremost eat very, very similar in the off season as well. It's not too much of a change here. And at the same time, it's a gradual process. I'm getting used to it. At first, I'm sucking it up that I have less to eat or less calories to play with. But the food volume stays relatively the same. And also, I know how to make it tasty. And that's not like hyper palatable, but it just comes in I hate to use that term, but in a natural form of making it tasty. I'm not trying to artificially, I'm not trying to artificially boost it up so that I'm just like having a dopamine rush or so.
That's where there's this sweet spot between these things because it's something like sweeteners. They can be a helpful tool in a diet to give you some sweetness without the calories, but, and I've been there, you can use so many of these fuckers that you're just craving them all the time. And then everything just doesn't taste good. And your tongue feels weird and your stomach feels off. It's like, if you find yourself getting into that position, which is why I get issues with like chewing gum where I just want more. I want more. I eat a whole packet a day. Or I don't eat it, of course. I hope not. But like it just ends up, I just feel a bit meh for it. So I'm better off really like, okay, 2 Diet Cokes a day, that's my max. Something like this. Not, it doesn't matter, I can have as many sweeteners as I want. I'm going to have a whole liter or 2 liters. And it's then you just don't start feeling great. So yeah, it's a complex topic because I think a lot of people, like when you say it to people and you're like, like moderation is key and have like a good wholesome base of a diet. But there's a lot of individual differences within that. And it can be spoken about at length, as we've already said. Like we tried to, you're like, there's 7 minutes, but we can probably talk about this for a whole podcast.
No, absolutely. Maybe we should save it then for the rest of next week or so. So yeah, guys, then as always, thank you very much for tuning in. If you have anything to say about this, about kind of the what you deem as a responsible way of eating, what you think is a good way, whether you are in need of using kind of the tools that Steve is also using in order to get calories in, or whether you're someone who's actually then on lower calories and needs to go down that route of kind of properly cooking for yourself and all that kind of stuff, let us know in the comment section below, because it really interests me. By the way, it's always the same people who are commenting, which is something that I very, very much dig. I always appreciate like people such as Chris and O, seeing those names in the comment section below. And it always, I don't know, fulfills me with a joy and happiness to see the same people tuning in and also commenting. It feels like, I don't know, we are interacting when it comes to meeting together here for those Improvement Season podcast episodes. So guys, as always, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button if you haven't done so already. Leave a comment section in the comment below so that you are, I don't know, becoming part of the community as well. And then I guess I'll speak to you guys soon. Cheers.
That's what I was going to say. It feels like they're on this journey with us. I like it too. Cheers, guys.
Cheers.
Take care.
Losing weight fast while maintaining muscle mass. Sounds too good to be true, doesn't it? It isn't though. It's reality and we know how to do it. And we will help you achieve this. The Minicut Movement is an 8-week fat loss program to make you lose a huge chunk of fat while maintaining muscle mass at the same time. We will support you from the beginning to the end so that you see the results you would like to and come out of it much stronger. You'll receive a fully automated spreadsheet that is based on your nutritional needs. You can choose between 6 different male and female training templates. Over 30 videos will guide you through each and every single step of the Minicut so that you're getting the most out of your journey and that you always know what to do. But the best thing is that you can start whenever you want. The Minicut Movement is open 24/7. So if you want to learn more or you're ready to sign up, hit the link in the description below. So let's revive stronger together.